So let's start our session today. My name is Maddie. I'm one of the project officers with An Eye to the Future. An Eye to the Future is an initiative from Blind Citizens Australia funded through the Department of Social Services that recognises the career potential of people who are blind or vision impaired, including their unique skill sets, adaptability, and flexibility. To do this, we are connecting and working with employers who have the capacity to offer paid internships for people who are blind or vision impaired. An Eye to the Future will support employers and interns every step of the way, right from the recruitment process, guidance around accessibility and accessible technology options, and provide support for the duration of the internship. In session 1 today, we will address the issue of funding for businesses who employ staff with a disability. To speak to this, I'd like to introduce everyone to Renee Solomon. Renee is one of the Eye to the Future project officers. And over to you. Thank you, Renee.
Thanks, Maddie. Hello all, thanks for joining us today. So as Maddie said, I am a project officer with An Eye to the Future. I'll be talking, as Maddie said, around the myth related to the cost of hiring people who are blind or vision impaired. As it's quite content heavy, I'm actually going to share a PowerPoint presentation with you all. So just bear with me a moment while I get that up and running. Okay, hopefully everybody can see the first page. So Job Access is the national hub for workplace and employment information for people with disability as well for employers. It's funded by the Australian government and the services are then delivered by industry professionals. The aim of Job Access is to provide free support to help remove the barriers to employing people with disability. For example, they provide an advice line for both employers and employees. They provide an employer engagement team, which works to connect employers with talent. And of course, a workplace modification service funded by the Employment Assistance Fund, which covers everything from that a person with disability requires to work safely and productively in the workplace. So assessments and adjustments, training, assistive technology requirements, etc. And Job Access will coordinate all of this at no cost. So that's the myth that we can bust straight away and tell you that there is absolutely no cost associated with hiring a person that is blind or vision impaired. Job Access and the Employment Assistance Fund has all of that covered. It's very important, however, to recognise that not all people with vision loss actually require adjustments. There's several variables, but most commonly it will depend on the extension of vision loss, and also that some employees may already own the assistive technology that they require to perform their roles. Where there is a need, however, Job Access will step in and provide everything that the employer and the employee needs to fulfil their role. So the Employment Assistance Fund provides employers with the financial assistance needed for work-related modifications, equipment and services that help people with disability to gain employment and perform their work independently and productively. What the Employment Assistance Funding provides will be tailored to the needs of the employee and the workplace, so this varies greatly. Typically, however, if the amount of funding required exceeds $1,000, a service provider will assist the workplace and carry out a workplace modification assessment to help figure out what modifications or equipment will best meet the employee's needs so that they can work safely and efficiently. This assessment is carried out by a qualified professional. The assessor looks at the workplace environment and any barriers that may exist, and talk with the employee and the employer to find solutions that make the workplace more flexible and accessible. For instance, a person who is blind or vision impaired, workplace modifications may include items like a larger monitor or software that magnifies the text on screen, technology that converts the text on the screen into sound via headphones, which is called a screen reader, large button phones, large print keyboards, mobile phones with text-to-speech software to allow for use of text messaging, installation of blinds or curtains over windows to reduce glare, magnification aids and devices to magnify hard copy documents. And these are just a few examples of many options that are available. And as I said, there's absolutely no cost to the employer for any of these. So what are the eligibility requirements for the Employment Assistance Fund? The employee must be an Australian resident. The person must already be recruited, so they have signed their contract, and the position is expected to continue for 13 weeks or more in a role that requires at least 8 hours of work per week. The employee must also have an ongoing disability that has lasted or will last at least 2 years, and the disability must limit, restrict or impair their ability to work in order to be eligible for these funds. So how to make an application for the Employment Assistance Fund. Before making an application to Job Access for the Employment Assistance Fund, it's important that you speak to the employee seeking reasonable adjustments about their specific needs. The reason for this is that what one person who is blind or vision impaired may need can be quite different to another person with sight loss. Some employees may know what modifications they need from previous work experience, while other employees may need a workplace assessment to work out what modifications or technology would be best for them. If a workplace assessment is needed, Job Access will arrange a specialist to confirm what workplace changes are required. Once an employee knows what technology or other workplace adjustments they will need to perform their job, then the employer can submit an application to Job Access for the Employment Assistance Fund. There is no cost associated with the workplace modification and assessment. Got marbles in my mouth today. After submitting an application, Job Access will assess the application and let you know the outcome. Once the application is approved, the organisation can then purchase the goods or services and have the costs reimbursed by Job Access. Some important notes with respect to the Employment Assistance Fund. When purchasing any equipment to be reimbursed by Job Access, the organisation initially pays for the equipment, not the employee. So the organisation then claims the reimbursement through Job Access, which typically takes around 30 days to be repaid. Any equipment purchased through Job Access for an employee belongs to that employee, not the organisation. So when that employee leaves your organisation and goes to another position, they take that equipment with them. It's also important to be aware that the process of having a workplace assessment, submitting an application for the Employment Assistance Fund, getting it approved, and purchasing the technology can take time, obviously. Please be aware that it can take up to 6 weeks in some cases, so it's important to start this process as soon as possible after the employment contract is signed and allow for this with the employee's contracted start date. Other support provided through Job Access, they provide apart from financial support. They also have a website with multiple resources, including an employer toolkit that provides short video lessons and downloadable resources. There's also a dedicated advice line for a free and confidential discussion, as well as tools and resources to assist organisations in creating a flexible work environment and recruiting and retaining people with disability. This is also something that the team at An Eye to the Future can discuss with you at any time. One of the standout features of the Eye to the Future project is that, unlike some disability employment services, we are completely free for service. We can source your candidates, assist with the recruitment process, and will work with you and the intern throughout the duration of the internship. So with respect to the costs associated or the stigma related to cost associated with hiring somebody who is blind or vision impaired. We'll now move to a couple of minutes for questions, if anybody would like to raise their hand. Well, it's glad to see that I must have been very thorough.
Renee, we've got Sally has her hand up.
Hi, Sally.
Hi, Renee. My name's Sally. I just have some sort of entry point questions about job access.
Sure.
I'm interested to know if you're aware whether there's a preference for the employer or the employee to commence the process, as in make the first steps of the application. When I first read the job access website, I got a sense that there was a preference that the employee take that first step, and so I sort of wanted to understand that. And then I've lost my second question, so maybe I'll just leave you with that one.
To be honest with you, I'd like to answer you as accurately as possible. With respect to the responsibility of making the workplace accessible, that is definitely the employer,
Yes.
not the employee. So it would certainly make sense that the employee who obviously lives with vision loss would have an understanding of their needs. So yes, I would say that if job access wants to have a discussion with the employee around that, that would make perfect sense, because there's no use that information coming from an employer rather than the person themselves. So that would certainly make sense to me, yes.
Yeah, I just got the sense from the website that it was sort of like the employee, they're the person with the lived experience. If they start the process, then and then it's up to us as the employer, as you say, to take the steps to modify the workplace. And I've still lost my second question, so I'm just going to go back on mute.
Renee, it's Connor. If I could just jump in there as well, Sally. Sorry, Sally. I'm a blind worker myself. So generally, I don't know if there is a preference for one or the other, but generally, I think employees are encouraged to be proactive in if they realise they're about to get that job, try to put things in motion as soon as possible.
Yeah, awesome.
So it's generally, it's not really deemed up to be one or the other. It's both just trying to get it starting as quickly as possible.
As soon as possible. It makes sense, Connor. And I think, clearly, really, job access's preference one way or the other, it really comes down to a conversation between us as the employer and the employee to say, hey, these are the two options. Which do you prefer, I guess? So I appreciate that. Thank you, Connor.
Sure.
No problem.
Thanks, Connor.
No problem.
Were there any other questions for Renee? I don't see any hands. Oh, Tim's got a question.
Sorry, I'm in a noisy place, but I just wanted to say that I've been through this process 2 or 3 times with different jobs, and I would mention it in the interview and say, yep, I've got access to funding for equipment or necessary modifications, and then I'd set it all up, and at any point where the employer had to liaise, they could, but I kind of guided it through because I wanted the job and wanted the opportunity. So yeah, it was really down to me, because employers in the main won't really know how to manage the process, I suppose.
And I think, thanks for that, Tim. I think it's what we've sort of acknowledged through the feedback that we've just received, that it should really be a bit of a partnership, because whilst, of course, the employee is the expert of their own life and needs, the whole idea is to help employers become more aware of how to make their workplace accessible. So I would always say to work together through that process and learn from each other to get the best outcome for both the workplace and the employee.
Craig, I can see you've got your hand up with a question.
Yeah, I was just curious because these services, it seems like they're available if you're hiring a person with a disability, but I was curious if they're available or if other things are available. If you have an existing employee who acquires a disability while they're working with you, are there services available to then make these modifications?
Absolutely, that Job Access and the Employment Assistance Fund is there to support that as well, of course. And in fact, that's one of the requirements to be eligible for the funds, is that the person is already employed with the organisation. So that's why we say that if you've just employed that person, their contract actually needs to be signed so that they are legally employed.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Before.
You're cutting out there a bit, Renee.
Oh, was I?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you hear everything I said that mattered?
I also saw that Liz had your hand up as well. Did you have a question, Liz?
I did have my hand up, Maddie. How you going? I'm from Child and Family Services in Ballarat. And
hi, Liz.
Hi. I actually had exactly the same question as Craig. We have an employer at the moment. I'm an employee at the moment who's legally blind and often looking for potential for upgrades to facilities and office suites and programs that can be better. So yeah, I was actually asking, same as Craig, on his behalf. So that's really great.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said in response to some previous comments, I would really encourage you to both work together with that, because the whole idea of particularly the project that we're running at the moment is to increase an understanding of how to make a workplace accessible. So I would really encourage all employers to work with that employee, because it's a learning opportunity for the employer as well, that when you face that those needs again, you have a better understanding of what you're facing and how to actually go about getting what that person in the workplace needs.
Thanks so much, Renee. That's terrific.
You're more than welcome.
We might put a call out to any final questions for Renee. Okay, well, they were brilliant questions. Thank you for your questions, and thank you, Renee, for sharing that about the costs or lack of costs associated when employing someone who's blind or vision impaired.